Hey everybody, it's me. It's Wednesday again, and I'm here with you once again. I hope that you're doing okay. I hope for today that you've had a pretty laid back day. It's 7 o'clock Eastern time here, and today I wanted to talk to you about something that's not really sexy. It's not salacious. It's not even really fun, but it's been on my mind to do it for quite some time because I've been getting a lot of inboxes about it. And it would be some experiences that people are sharing with me in domestic violence relationships or intimate partner violence relationships. And so I felt it necessary to talk about some of the things that have been coming into my inbox, and not so much anything specific, but more importantly, a theme that I'm seeing, and it may be just because of the case I experienced. So this is not going to be so much about me as much as it's about what I have been receiving for quite some time, and just some of the things that I learned about it afterwards, because it's really difficult to learn it when you're experiencing it. So that's what we're going to talk about. That's what I'm going to talk about today. And if this is not something that's for you, that's cool. Maybe you can pass along, because I can guarantee you there's somebody in your friends list that this is probably necessary for, or maybe you know somebody. So that's just how we're going to roll today. So thank you for joining me. And also thank you for, supporting me with this and showing up when you do and all that other good stuff. And the feedback, I appreciate it. It has not gone unnoticed. Let me say that. So basically, this is going to talk about the intimate partner relationships, and that's just when I say intimate partner, that's obviously what it means, intimate partner. So this is not mostly about women who experience violence at the result of a man, even though it is about 70% of the cases is men on abusing women. We also know that men experience it as well, and that's about around 20%. And we also know that there's same-sex partners and things like that. And so, kind of wherever you fit in, whoever you are, just hopefully you'll pay attention to what I'm going to share. I'll tell you it's kind of hard because, I recognize that it's something that a lot of people are experiencing, some very tumultuous relationships, and being that we've been in this pandemic, people have had to endure it at a very heightened level, because the person that they're in an intimate partner relationship, they may be living with or cohabitating with, and it makes things even more extreme, because people don't necessarily have an outlet per se. Now, some of the countries opening back up, but if you compound the stress of a pandemic, maybe somebody lost their job, maybe somebody's hours got cut, maybe somebody's place is they can't pay their rent, so they're facing eviction. It could definitely be a catalyst for an escalation. So we do know that in this time, from at least the domestic violence community, in terms of people who support it, that it's been very difficult in this time. So I want you to just think about this from if that's not necessarily the case, and you're in a situation where it is abusive of some sort, verbal. There's several types of abuse, but there's verbal and emotional and physical, spiritual abuse. There's elderly abuse. There's financial abuse. All of these different things. I am noticing what's coming into my inbox is that people are reaching out to me after the fact. So what I mean by after the fact is that they have been in a relationship with this person, and things have gotten to a point of escalation, and that escalation has resulted in some type of act that has been deemed criminal. And what I mean by that is they felt the need to defend themselves. And so people are getting charged, people are getting arrested. And so when they're reaching out to me, it's after the fact. So now they're fighting against a system, if you will, in a criminal case. And so hey Andre, hey Dana, it's Bolden, hey Thornton. and James. I wanted to talk to you about the 4 things that I learned and then a few other things. So, they say these relationships are complicated. They really are. Relationships in general are complicated. But I'm going to speak specifically about these instances where we're in it with someone and we don't necessarily need them for any other reason other than we're choosing to be there. Okay? Because there are some situations I've seen with women who were immigrants to people who were citizens and had to stick around and deal with some very awful things until they were able to get out of those things. There's been financial issues where people couldn't leave. There's been very dire situations. And I'm not here to talk about that specifically because I don't necessarily have my own experience with it, but I do know of other people's experiences. I'm specifically here to talk about those instances where you're just in a messy situation with someone that is probably not compatible with you, and at some point there's been a real disconnect in between where you two are, and it could be situations where red flags was missed and things are starting to escalate, and it's pretty much in a cycle, and that cycle essentially is the tension building phase where there's some indications that there's already the red flags, and the person is probably handling them in a way, or you handling them in a way where it could cause some issues, some fear, some intimidation, maybe some name calling, maybe some threats, things like that. And then the next cycle of that is actually going to be the incident, because something's going to happen. And maybe that's a physical, maybe that's yelling, maybe that's throwing things, maybe whatever the case may be, but it's some act that's an incident that takes place. And then the next part of that cycle is basically reconciliation. So it's this like, okay, my bad. I'm not going to do it no more. I was wrong. And, I'm sorry, and I'm a change, or, don't leave me, or, whatever the case may be. And then there's a calm. And so in the calm phase, typically that's the phase that most people I know, including myself, don't necessarily see it that way, but what you're looking for is to get back to that calm. You're looking to get back to that place where everything was great when you met that person, because typically those situations are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Dynamic, and they're very invigorating. They're fun, and the person, you gravitate towards them because a lot of the times they know exactly what it is that you're looking for, and they provide that, just depending on, their history of being an abuser or a manipulator. Who knows? But in that calm is when everything is good. There's no fighting. Everybody's cool. The honeymoon phase. And typically that's where makeup sex comes in. It's really good. And we're going to keep it a buck here because everybody's grown. If they're not, don't let your kids watch this. But maybe when they get teenagers, kind of let them know. I don't know. But I'm just saying that this is what happens. And then it just goes, especially if it's a very toxic, unhealthy, an abusive type of intimate partner relationship. So that's just the cycle. And so my hopes for you, if you know someone or if they are in it, just know that there is 4 options for that. And I speak about this in my TED talk, and not necessarily options for that, but I guess it's choices that will take place as a result of these really messy type of abusive situations. There's life, there's death, there's prison, and there's freedom. And it took me some time to kind of understand that, because I had to almost do like a diagram of, okay, what would life look like? What would obviously death look like? Not outside of a physical death, but just even a death, of emotional death, a spiritual death, a brokenness, a conscious death as a result of enduring that type of violence in a relationship, which is also very unhealthy. And then ultimately, of course, death is the one that you can't come back from, a physical death. And then obviously the first choice would have been life. So you, at some point, get tired, or you recognize your self-value and your worth, and you're empowered to say, I don't really have to think about what it is that they're doing and sidestepping and why did they do that, that you just say, you know what, that's not what I want, that's not healthy, it's not good for me, and I'm out, right? And so my prayer is that that is a position, if you're not an imminent threat, and it's not so difficult for you to make that move, that you are actually able to do that sooner rather than later, because the longer people stay in it, the harder it is to leave. not impossible, but it is harder to leave. So my prayer is that there is life. There is some acknowledgement of this isn't what I want. I don't deserve this. And whatever their issue is, or whatever it is, which is usually control, and it's a whole other list of other things that they have to work on, is not something for me to do. Or help or change, because the person is not going to change. More than likely, they've been doing this for a while, they're not going to change. It is nothing that you're going to do that's going to force them to change. They're going to change when they believe they have a problem and they acknowledge it and they want to. But I don't see them most of the time changing for other people. So that's that. But it's your choice to make at that point if you are able to do that. And I spoke about death and then prison. Now, prison being obviously the physical sense, an institution, as a result of you having to either defend yourself against your abuser, or your abuser, doing something and harming you that cause them to go to prison. So here's the thing, like when those situations, nobody wins. I think that's one of the things we lose track of. Because the abuser doesn't win. Either they don't get caught and they go on doing this to other people because they haven't had a consequence that's been severe enough, or they do something that's very or it's a charge and it's something that's very egregious, and then they are subject to a criminal charge of the criminal justice system, and they have people that love them. It may be their family, it may be kids that you all have, but like nobody wins. And so that's just something to think about. And then the prison of, if you stay in that situation and it's not a physical imprisonment, then the imprisonment of being trapped in fear, the imprisonment of the cycle of domestic violence, which I spoke about earlier, tension, incident, reconciliation, calm, and then repeat, because it is a cycle. And so that's also outside of the physical imprisonment. You're talking about just being in the psychological fear, tension cycle, emotional and spiritual cycle of that imprisonment of that relationship, which obviously doesn't need to be a relationship anymore. And then the other one is freedom. And that would always be your choice, like to have your life and your freedom, to decide at some point that, if I would say early on, that that's not what you want to be in, and it's not healthy for you. Hey Lourdes, hey Shasha, hey Pasha. And I have run across several women. One of them is she is a pretty notable hair person. She does hair, beautician. And I remember her telling me a situation based off of a small snippet of conversation that I was having on the phone, and she was able, from her experience, to identify what took place. What I'm also noticing is that a lot of people have endured this relationship for some time, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And then things that's been coming into my inbox is that people have been, harming their abusers, and as they say in a defense, and it's costing them their freedom. And so that's why it's important to look at what that could look like long term, and really identify what your non-negotiables are, what your boundaries are, because, staying in it without, any recourse to understand, how that's looking is hard when you're in it. It gives the person pretty much a green light to continue to do what they're doing, because it's reinforcing their behavior, because there's no consequence behind it. They know that you're not going to leave, or they know you're not going to, expect any better from them. And I can tell you, I've had incidents where I've had fellow, guy friends of mine that had mentioned that they were in a phase in their life, and whatever they were dealing with, that person that was close to them, which is usually a female that they were dating, unfortunately was the closest and safest person for them to act out that aggression and anger. But whatever they were going through in their life didn't have anything to do with her. And because, they didn't handle that well, these women at some point did leave. And I can tell you, for them, that along with some anger management that they were forced to do, The anger management really didn't get them as much as them wanting to not be that person, but that was a personal choice. There was a choice to say, I don't want to be like that. I got a problem. I don't want to be like that. In addition to when the girl left somebody they really cared about, they did not look back. And so that was a consequence that they felt that was severe enough for them to change. But that's all like a personal thing. And sometimes people need help with that. And sometimes it comes at a really, really high cost. So, I want you to think about that. I want to tell you about the escalation point. There's always an escalation point. There's always an escalation point. If it is, in fact, like just kind of lingering on right now, is an escalation point. And those are the ones that have severe high amount of cost. And that cost could be your freedom, and it could be your life. It could be your money. It could be your finances. It could be your job. It could be a whole lot of different things. But I do know that I am seeing where people are losing a significant amount of their life earnings, their life, or their time behind situations that escalate, and not being able to identify that early on that it was something that wasn't right, and then sticking in there for a long period of time. And so the question people always ask is, well, why don't they just leave? That's a whole another video. But one thing, I've noticed, and I've talked to people who didn't want to leave, or wasn't sure they were ready to leave, or wasn't able to recognize that situation was as bad as it was, and wasn't leaving. And I've had to have some really hard conversations with people. First of all, when they get tired, not if, when they get tired, they'll leave. And that's the prayer that they do so before it is in a situation where they're not able to. But in the meantime, I've had to have some really crucial conversations, and they have not been easy. And I've had to say, okay, if it's possible, get you an escape plan so that when you get tired, you have a way of leaving. And then we list out what that is. The other thing I have said is to make sure you have emergency funds for if when you leave, if you decide to leave, or if you need a bond. Point blank. You may need a bond because you may have to defend yourself, and then 9 times out of 10, with the way things are going, you may be arrested. So just have bond money, just in case. And the last thing I've had to say to people, and it's not easy, is to have life insurance for you and your dependents. Get life insurance. Very hard thing to say to people, but very necessary, because sometimes people don't necessarily see how dire it is. And when things happen, and they happen really fast, these are the situations that these relationships produce. And so I've been very honest and said those things. Never any judgment from me on that. People will figure that out, and we always pray that they do. In the meantime, as far as the abuser is concerned, what I've realized about abusers, obviously you may have heard this about power and control, and somewhere in their life it hasn't been any, or they're dealing with some place in where it wasn't the case. Pretty angry about some things. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't have anything to do with that person as much as it is them. I say that they do know how to control their anger. Simply, hey Tangi, simply because a lot of them have functioning jobs that they go to. They go to places where people irritate them all the time. They're not swinging on and hitting people and cussing and yelling people out everywhere they go. So that's probably because they have a lot to lose with those situations, i.e. stability, job, paying your bills, money. So you know that you have to control yourself in the event that something bothers you and angers you. If you're out somewhere and you know that happens, and you control yourself in the event that you don't want to get in trouble and go to jail, right? So there is consequences for actions. They are well aware of them. It is a choice. They can control it. And when they have the ability to get away with it and not control it, then more than likely they're going to seek that avenue as a way to exploit by manipulation and control, because other areas in their life may not be in their control. They may exercise control in other areas. I don't have enough letters in my name or behind my name, degrees to back all that up. Just experience. Um, I'm not saying for anyone to leave. I have personally never told anyone to leave. I've always asked the question if they were. I've always listened to the answers to see what they were going to say. Oftentimes, um, oftentimes they're not ready to leave. Yolanda Lattimore, lot to lose. That says a lot. Eye opening. It is. It is. I don't think people really quantify the loss. It's not only just a loss between the people and some death of their consciousness and their brokenness, but it's anybody who is directly connected to the situation. So that could be your children, that could be their family, that could be your family, and then it could be a community. And so what happens is there's a reverb, right? So a situation takes place, and I'll just use myself an example. A situation takes place, two people in the situation, kids on both ends. The situation happens, Marissa gets arrested, Marissa goes to jail. Baby loses 3 years with her mom, kids loses 3 years away from me. Other kids has to testify in a trial. Then this thing becomes a national case. That's a whole community. It's even if it doesn't happen in a national level within the community, when there's loss and family and people are impacted. And I don't think we really spend enough time to really understand the impact that our choices have on the people that love us and are close to us and may not necessarily have a say so in it. And I'm not saying to make your decision about whether or not you're going to stay or leave be directly, impacted or directly related to that. I think it really has to start from a place of self-worth and value. But I will say this: when you're in a situation and you're in the midst of it, you're not most likely going to be able to pull in your self-worth and value at that time. You first need to get away. Because what you need is no contact with it so that you can think and have not cloudy, walking on eggshells. What if I don't know about this and we're going to get in a fight and then we make it. You are not going to be able to find, have quiet time and time within who you call your God. I call them God, to be able to discern that and have the strength to get out of it and stay. And so you typically will find that sometime afterwards, but it's very, 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 very difficult to find it when you're in a relationship. You typically have to be out of it to do so. And I pray that it's not too late. So let's see. I think I mentioned all of the things I was going to mention. I think one of the things that's also very important is that once you leave, like, no communication whatsoever. Like, no communication. If you need to block them on your social media or anything, do that. If you're in a situation where you don't want to be found, you're probably going to have to, I don't know, go under somebody else. If you're dying to get on social media, and have like a whole completely different alias and enjoy it, great. If it is not that big of a deal to you, don't get on it. Nobody connected through you all through mutual friends is going to need to know and pass messages. It will come a time where you might just be curious enough, or you're aching because it was a relationship. They're not easy to let go, and you may want to actually just see or write or have some type of closure. I'll tell you something about closure in a minute, but you're going to have to figure out a plan for making sure that the communication and the complete separation stays in place. For some people, including myself, I have written letters to emails and never sent them. I journal. I have, if I had to hit the send button, I have very close people to me that I can send these vents, these rants, these feelings or whatever to. But I make it my business I have made it my business, I should say, not to actually send that message or connect or any of those things. It's very important that there is separation, and it needs to be a minimum of a year, especially when there's been a lot of abuse in that relationship on any level. It really needs to be a year. So I'm hoping that takes place. And closure, here's the thing about closure. Sometimes you ain't gonna get closure, not the way you think you should get it. And you're going to have to develop a plan for how you're going to take those hurts and those pains and those disappointments and bring it to closure in your heart with you and whoever it is your higher power is. Because it's not always going to be feasible, wise, or a good decision to try to bring that closure through the same thing that opened the wound. So, maybe that'll make some sense. That's basically, all I had today on that. I appreciate, you guys for joining. Know that there's a lot of people out there in very toxic, messy, and dysfunctional, unhealthy relationships that really shouldn't be in them to begin with. And I will say that I know what that's like, and hoping that you can be honest with yourself and have an honest conversation with yourself at some point. And I pray that you have people in your corner who will support you in the helping you at least deal with it, because oftentimes people get tired of people in those relationships because they hate to see you hurting yourself, or they hate to see you continue to touch a hot stove when you know it's hot. And so it's difficult for people who have to bear that burden with you to see you long suffer, especially on something that is hurting you, or that you can get out of. And so it's very rare to find somebody to kind of long suffer through somebody on a situation where there's obviously abuse in a relationship for a long period of time. It's very difficult to be able to do that, and not many of us are built to do that. I mean, I think it's just human nature. But I hope that there is someone that you can contact and just give them a heads up, or people who would check on you periodically. But my prayer is that you get out of it, and that you get away from it. Like I said, there's a lot of people that are enduring and enduring and enduring, and it just doesn't get better. It just doesn't. It never gets better. I'm going to go with never. Just doesn't get better. And there's no amount of what you have going on that's going to make them change if that's not what they want to do. And I don't want you to lose your life. And I darn sure don't want you to go to prison. I really want you to have life and freedom abundantly. And, take the lessons and the blessings from it, and not the shame and the pain, right? And everybody has a journey. Yours may be different. And here I am to kind of share with you the one time we'll go through that again. So that's all I got for you all today. I appreciate you from joining. If I look like I'm just I'm shy today, I'm sore. My muscles are sore, and I'm a little bit fatigued. So I'm going to drink all this water and chill out. And I appreciate you joining me and being patient with me. And again, if you know somebody, pass this along to them. Life, death, prison, or freedom. That is the options. Not options. Those are the choices that come out of staying or leaving those relationships, intimate partner relationships.